All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and call to order the Assembly Quality Municipal Services Ethics and Elections Committee meeting. We are noticed today, Wednesday, December 18th, from 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. here at City Hall, room 155. Let's go ahead and start with Assembly member introductions.
Karen Bronga.
Felix Rivera, and then on the phone we have Mr. Littlefield and Mr. Johnson.
Yep, I'm here.
Great.
I'm here.
And then I've also been notified that Member Brawley will be joining us on the phone shortly, and then Member Constant will not be able to join us and is excused. All right. So we just have really a couple of items under new business to deal with. The remainder of the items I don't think we'll be dealing with today. So we're going to be spending all of our time with our good friends at the library today. So I will go ahead and turn it over to the library to begin. Do you have a formal presentation or?
We do not. We
Okay,
have
just
provided you all a
documents.
one-page document. We don't have any pretty pictures yet to make a pretty presentation.
That's fair. All right, go ahead.
My name is Elizabeth Nicolai. I am the acting director of the Anchorage Public Library. And I want to acknowledge that we have 3 members of our Anchorage Library Foundation here with us in audience as well. So sort of the background is many years ago, a community member by the name of Janet Getz was very, very involved in the previous downtown library and saddened when it had left. And so upon her death, she left a large bequest to the Library Foundation for the construction and funding, including operational funding of a downtown library. But it was never quite enough money to both fund and the construction and the operations. So after several years of going back and forth under the previous administration, under the Bronson administration, a $2.5 million grant for the Anchorage Library Foundation was secured for the construction or renovation of a downtown library. And so what we are talking about is 2 separate funding sources, both the state grant and the Getz Trust. One is for construction and one is for operations. Both are currently with the Anchorage Library Foundation. So what you have before you are 2 separate agreements. One is that have been negotiated between municipal attorneys and foundation attorneys for a good deal of time. And one makes the municipality of Anchorage a sub-grantee of this $2.5 million save for some. You'll see that it says $2.5 million under construction, and then under the sub-grantee it says $2,380,000, and that difference is the operational costs retained by the foundation. And so that is that state grant for the construction, and then there's another agreement for the Getz Trust for the operations, and this is tied to the old the old City Hall in downtown, and this will appear on the January 7th agenda. We do intend to submit an S version that will make one very minor correction at the request of finance. It changes one account string, and that will be the only change. But this will agree that the municipality of Anchorage will renovate Old City Hall and then operate for 12 years a library in Old City Hall.
Great, thank you. So I have a few questions, so I'll get started. And if other members in person just flag me down, on the phone, feel free to text me. Thank you so much for this. I know this has been something a long time coming, and I apologize that the downtown or North Anchorage members couldn't be here. I know they are excited about this development. So a couple things to start for me. And maybe if there's someone who is a representative of the foundation, if you want to come up here and join us in this conversation. Whoever wants to be the spokesperson for today's meeting. So I guess first question that I have, because I didn't see total dollar figure in here. What's the current dollar figure in the and I apologize if I mispronounced the last name. Is it Gates? Goats? Getz.
Getz.
Thank you. The Getz Trust.
So I'm looking over there at our executive director, hoping she whips out the answer on her phone. And Ro might also know the answer.
Ross Sergilewski to the chair. It's approximately 14.5 million, and that is funding that is in the Getz Trust, which is about 8.6 million, and then other funds within the health.
So the Getz Trust then, for anybody who didn't catch that on the mic, is approximately $8.6 million. And sorry, for the record, this is Chelsea Ricola. I'm the vice president of the Anchorage Library Foundation.
Great. Thank you so much. Does this agreement with the trust and the Library Foundation also include M&O, or would that be something the municipality takes on?
It does. Within the agreement, it starts at 450,000, up to 450,000 annually to be adjusted for inflation for maintenance and operations, which we know from running similarly sized libraries. It would be a 32-hour-a-week library, which is very similar to what we are doing in Mountain View, Muldoon, and that is very comparable to what we spend to operate those libraries.
Got it. Okay. I'll go ahead and pause, see if other members have questions. Yeah, go ahead, Member Bronga.
So at one point I heard Parks and Rec was also moving into the old City Hall, or are you taking the whole space now, or are you going to be co-located with Parks and Rec?
The plan that had been previously discussed was for part of Parks and Rec to move under there. I don't believe that is still the plan. I have not talked about with Parks Director Braniff for probably a year, but at that time he was less interested in moving into that facility. Within Old City Hall, there's the part that's currently occupied by Visit Anchorage that will remain. And the library is slated to look at the second floor. Our current understanding is that the first floor has too many historical easements for it to be easily renovated. So we are looking at the second floor, and it would leave the first floor open to another tenant. That has not at this point been identified.
Great, thank you. Okay, so then I guess back to me. That actually raised another question, because I haven't been in that building in a while. Is that building ADA compliant, since you're talking about second floor?
The very first thing we will do after, and I've already worked with our M&O director, is as soon as this funding is hopefully passed on January 7th's meeting, we will start a architectural concept and an engineering survey. We do expect that some will have to be done. I know for particular, like there's a elevator that needs to be replaced or updated. So those will all be in the plans.
Got it. Is there any contingency funding in case costs escalate and this 2.5, well, really 2.38, doesn't cover all of the expected costs?
I can speak to that if I might, Mr. Chair. Becky McPherson, Municipal Manager. There isn't. And honestly, that is probably the biggest risk that we're taking in stepping into this commitment and into this, what I think is a very exciting project, but which does carry with it the question of if there's insufficient funding, what do we do? And as outlined in the documents, we have discussed with the Library Foundation working together on a plan of fundraising to address any insufficiency in funding if the projected costs of the project exceed that grant amount. And so again, we would have to work together and figure out what our next steps would be if the projected costs exceed the total capital grant. And I would say there is, on the operating front, there are provisions in the agreement where if the 450 as adjusted annually is insufficient to fund operations for that 32 hours a week, then there's a provision specifically in the agreement where the parties meet and consult and consider whether the hours of operation should be scaled back or any other changes should be made to allow the library to function within that operational support amount.
Got it. So what happens after 12 years? Is that 12 years because that's the trust will be depleted by that point, or what does 12 years mean?
So the Library Foundation landed on the number of 12 years because the minimum set out in the Getz Trust for operation length of time was 10 years. We wanted to honor the wishes of the person who left that substantial gift, and make it last for what appears to be a reasonable time considering the funds available.
Got it. And then I guess at that point, after 12 years, the discussion returned back to the municipality.
That's correct. I mean, this is the reason we wanted to make sure we spent the time on these documents is there are some risks we're taking on here that at 12 years, there isn't a plan for continued operational funding, but so that will be a decision point the municipality reaches at the end of that period.
Okay. So I'm familiar with the LUSAC library hours, but not as familiar with some of our other branches. What does 32 hours per week look like?
Through the chair, we vary that a little bit based off our community. For example, in Mountain View, it tends to stay open a little bit later to reflect the needs of their community. Usually that means 5 days a week operations. Tuesday through Saturday is what most of our branch locations are, which balances weekday and weekends, with hours between 10 and 6 and like 11 and 7, 12 and 8, somewhere around there, usually around that.
Got it. Thank you. Any other questions that folks have? No, I really appreciate this information. So everything that we have before us, so these items that have draft on them, are they going to be? Oh, sorry, I'm trying to remember. Were these items on the agenda yesterday?
Through the chair, yes, they were on the agenda.
Okay.
And honestly, we put them on the agenda because we had understood we needed a introduction and public hearing on the appropriation item, but the clerk determined that because it was a grant, I believe it did not require the public hearing, but it enabled us to put them before the body and then bring them here to this subcommittee.
Got it. Great. So then that'll be back before us at the meeting of January 7th. I'll just pause again to see if there's any members who have questions. Yeah, Member Braga.
So I'm looking on the second page of 2024-401. So funding will be used exclusively on line 21 to operate the downtown library branch, staff wages, building maintenance, inventory maintenance. So is that purchasing all the new books and materials that you'll have in there? So, okay, thanks.
Great. Thank you. Curious. So the library has been funded historically, and apologies, I can't remember if this was included in the budget that we just passed. So someone, please correct me if it wasn't included, for social workers. If that is that something that the library is considering expanding to the downtown location?
So through the chair, we have transitioned from the social workers. We are now calling them our community resources group. And they are librarians and associate librarians who connect to resources that are information resources as opposed to doing direct case management. So we are no longer working with social workers in direct case management, but we are helping connect to community resource as well as compiling and hosting other services within the community. And that program was included. It was moved from the alcohol tax to the general operating budget for 2025. And those positions are working through the HR process and should be posted online for hire very soon. Those positions are hired for the entire system and are intended to work at all of our locations. And we are hopeful that by the time the downtown library comes in, we will have a really solid group and be able to find how that will work within them. So I absolutely would expect that group would have a presence at the downtown library as well.
Great, thank you. Okay. All right. Then not seeing any other questions. Did the library have anything else they wanted to share with us?
No, but thank you very much for the time in your committee meeting.
Great. Yeah, no, thank you. And I'm really thankful for the partnership between the library and the foundation to make this project happen. Very appreciative. All right. So moving on to other items on the agenda. So I'm likely to put push the parks jurisdiction question to the January meeting. In the January meeting, we will have discussions around the Sullivan Arena utilities. Folks who may remember that I believe it was the December 3rd meeting where we had an item on the agenda to discuss the Sullivan Arena utilities, and there was a request that this committee discuss that. So we'll pushing that to December. And then there was also a request to discuss some of the ongoing purchasing waivers happening at Chugaki River. There's been a series of them, and some members wanted to get a briefing on that. And then so that'll be some of our discussion for January. I'll go ahead and pause. Are there any other departments that fall within this committee that have something that they want to add? And I see there's a couple folks here. If you don't, that's okay. Okay, great. Then is there any other committee discussion before we adjourn? This is a quick and easy meeting. Just want to note for the record, we were joined by member Brawley some time ago. Thanks for joining us. We are about to adjourn though. Okay, so then seeing none, these documents for the library will be before us on January 7th, and we are adjourned.